This week's episode is a metaphor for life because we're all surrounded by negative energy and it's constantly eating through our shields, but the only way out is through. And the only way through is to climb into a big bubble and just sort of float across, hoping you don't run into a traffic jam with a bunch of other bubbles and, okay, I'm lost. This is a review of the Galactic Barrier, the 10th episode of Star Trek Discovery's 4th season. If you're watching this before you've seen the episode, don't worry. This review is spoiler-free. There's so much here that is good that I wish I could give this episode a more enthusiastic review. It's not that this is a bad episode overall. It's not. But the impact of the good stuff is dulled somewhat by the glacial pacing. But before I get to that, let me talk vaguely, so as to avoid spoilers, about the good stuff. We get some classic old school Star Trek going where no one has gone before in this episode, and it's great. I'm a sucker for this stuff. If you've been watching my reviews of this season, you know that my favorite episodes, Anomaly and Stormy Weather, have both been mostly standalone episodes that centered on the crew working to solve a problem that arose from a naturally occurring or what appeared to be a naturally occurring situation they encountered during their travels. This episode is a similar situation. Given what the title of the episode is, I don't think I'm spoiling anything by telling you that it involves Discovery trying to figure out a way to cross the Galactic Barrier. As established way back in the second pilot of Star Trek the Original Series and reestablished here, crossing the Galactic Barrier is pretty hard to do. The challenges involved in reaching the barrier, devising a plan to get through the barrier, and then having to come up with a new plan halfway through when the first plan fails. That's only a spoiler if you've never watched a TV show or seen a movie or read a book before. Allow the show to ratchet up the tension. Plus, some last-second news the crew receives from the Federation right before they begin the most dangerous part of their mission so far injects some urgency into the situation. It's a well that Star Trek has gone to many times before. It's not the most original way to raise the stakes, but in this case, the episode smartly puts the focus on the feelings of the characters. And the story definitely benefits from that sense of, okay, now we've got to do this. There's no turning back. The Galactic Barrier-related stuff aboard Discovery is the A story and takes up most of the episode, but we also get a B story centered on Book and Tarka, still with their own plans relating to the DMA and the aliens who built it, but having to take a quick side trip to stock up on some necessary Galactic Barrier crossing supplies, a side trip that gives Tarka an opportunity to dole out some more of his backstory. And that backstory is fine. It's more or less what I assumed it was, based on what Tarka told Book in a previous episode. Watching it actually play out on screen didn't really add anything for me, mostly because it feels like we've seen this story before. It wasn't bad, but the way it's used in the episode makes it feel like padding, as does the fact that it's basically a dramatization of stuff we already knew. We didn't know the details, of course, but we knew what it meant emotionally to Tarka, and I think Sean Doyle, the actor who plays Tarka, put that across through his performance in the scene where he gives Book the short version of his backstory. I haven't said enough about Doyle's work this season in my previous reviews, so let me make it clear that he has been excellent. Tarka, as written, as a character, has kind of drifted back and forth between being interesting and feeling like a stock character, but Doyle has always been excellent. And when Tarka is talking about his backstory and why he wants to do what he wants to do with the DMA and where he hopes to go and why, he projects such wistfulness and regret and vulnerability that honestly, I'm not sure I even needed to see what actually happened to get him to this point. I think I got it already through his performance. The way the episode uses Tarka's backstory actually brings me to the pacing issue with this episode. The main story was good, but it would have been better if it had been the story for, I don't know, the first half of the episode, maybe the first 2/3. This feels like a fragment of an episode. It's not that what happens isn't important to the overall story of the season. It's that I don't think it should have taken nearly an hour to tell this much of that story. We get this series of scenes before the opening credits where the stage is being set for Discovery's big important mission. And I like the idea of that. It adds gravity to what they're doing, lets us see that their mission is important and dangerous and a lot is at stake, but it just drags on. And unfortunately, the entire A story has that quality. The B story, on the other hand, feels too compressed. Like I said, I'm not sure the show even needed to actually show us Tarka's backstory, but if they wanted to show it to us, it needed more time and space in the episode. The way it's handled here feels like an afterthought. So the B story moves too quickly through events we already know, broadly speaking, while the A story takes too long to take us part of the way toward a destination we do actually want to get to. I want to see what's on the other end of this journey Discovery is currently on. I'm on the hook. I want to see what happens next. And it feels like we should be closer to that answer than we are. But we still have a few episodes left this season, so they've got to stretch. If this episode had left out the Tarka flashbacks and the Discovery stuff had taken, say, 25 to 30 minutes instead of 50 minutes, with the rest of the runtime consisting of the ship actually getting somewhere, instead of ending with them almost getting somewhere, I think I would have liked it better. As I said at the start of this review, there's good stuff here. In addition to what I've covered already, we get some nice character moments involving Saru and Stamets and Adira. We also get another occurrence of the supporting bridge crew blurting out random pieces of backstory and or character traits, but I don't even really mind that at this point. It happens so often this season, I kind of just think it's funny. There are also a couple of exchanges between Captain Burnham and Stamets, where Stamets is about to launch into a complicated technobabble explanation of something, and Burnham just cuts him off with something like, "Is it going to work or not?" Which I, not being a fan of technobabble, unless it's used as a joke, appreciated very much. So yeah, not a bad episode, but a frustrating one because of the pacing. I'm interested in where they're going. I want to get there. I understand making me wait a little. But if the show is going to do that, it should feel tense and suspenseful. And with this episode, it's starting to drag. My reaction to the show is moving from, I can't wait to see what happens next, to, okay, let's get on with it. So let's get on with it. Those are my thoughts about this episode. Let me know what you thought, but remember, my review was spoiler-free, so if you're going to include spoilers in your comments, please include a spoiler warning so that folks who haven't seen the episode yet can avoid spoilers if they want. If you want to support my channel, go to patreon.com/SteveShives to become a patron, or click the join button to become a member. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next week for a review of episode 11.